Hello, everyone. Just want to throw up some predictions real quick for this weekend's fights. I'll start off and briefly talk about the Bryant Jennings Alexander Dimitrenko fight. Crossroads fight for both guys. I like Jennings. He's a tough fighter, fringe contender. He weighs 225, but he just seems like a small heavyweight by today's standards. He's not a big puncher, grinder, great work ethic, comes in great shape, but he's 33 now as well, so his best days are arguably already behind him. He didn't look great in his last fight, but when you look at Dimitrenko, used to be a top prospect a long time ago. The loss to Eddie Chambers, the loss to Joseph Parker, getting knocked out in 3 rounds, really looks bad now. I've always questioned his will and his heart. And, he's a big guy. He looked the part at one time, but now he weighed in at 258. So I question what kind of shape he's coming into this fight, and I really question how bad he wants to win this fight. So I'm going to go with Jennings by a decision or a late TKO. I think Jennings just wants it a little bit more at this point in their careers. All right, so now to move on to the main card this weekend in Belfast, Northern Ireland, Carl Frampton, Tyson Fury. I'll start off with the first fight, Tyson Fury versus Francisco Pianeta. There's no question Fury's going to win this fight. It's just a matter of how he looks. I watched the weigh-in where Wilder crashed it. Fury looks a little bit better than he did in his last fight. He weighed 258. He still don't look good by any means, but his body looked a little leaner, a little more athletic. You can tell he's getting back into shape. And this fight, it ain't going to tell us much, but at least Pineta's a big guy. It gives, I think he'll give Fury some rounds. Unlike the last guy that was a blown-up cruiserweight that just had no business being in there. Neither really does Pianeta for that matter at this point in his career. But it should at least be a decent litmus test just to see how Fury looks back in there with at least a top 50 heavyweight, if you even want to call Pianeta that. And as for Pianeta, I do question how bad he wants to win this fight as well. At the weigh-in, he was just all smiles and even pulled out his cell phone and took a selfie with Fury. Like, are you serious? Like, this is a fight, man. Where's the competition? He just looked like he was happy to be there and pick up the check. So really, the result in this fight will depend on what Fury wants to do. Does he want to get some rounds in, build up his cardio a little bit, work on some things? Or does he just want to get Pianeta out of there? I don't expect Pianeta to launch much of an offensive assault at all. Not that he could, even if he wanted to, against Fury. But I'm thinking like 4 to 8 rounds. Pianeta will just retire on his stool, or they'll just stop the fight. I think Fury does want to look good with the Wilder fight looming. And, I think that's a decent prediction. Again, though, it wouldn't surprise me if this fight did go 12 rounds and turn into a bore fest. Just because Pianeta's not going to do much. He's just going to hold. He's not offensive. If he just stays defensive and doesn't come to win, they might, I could see a way it does, but I think Fury will try to get him out of there. So, and I also, like I said, I question how bad Pianeta even wants to fight. So, okay. And then for the main event, all right, so Carl Frampton versus Luke Jackson. I will admit, when this fight was made, I'd never heard of Luke Jackson. Looking at his box rec, I'm not impressed. 16 wins, only 7 knockouts. And another thing, whenever I see a top-rated guy from Australia, it always throws up a red flag to me. I mean, there's been a couple Australians through the years that have made an impact, but for the most part, whenever you see a highly rated Australian contender with a good record, I'm thinking like, wow, this guy's probably a bum, brought in to get knocked out. And that's what I'm thinking Jackson is in this fight. Watched a little bit of him on YouTube, and he looks like a come-forward guy with no power, just made to order for Frampton in every single way. He has no advantages in this fight. Frampton has the edge in power, speed, talent, just everything Frampton across the board in this one. This will be Frampton's last fight, most likely, while he's still in his prime or just coming out of his prime in Ireland. So I'm thinking he wants to put on a big show for his fans. Jackson, one thing I'll say about Jackson, he does look like a tough guy. I was reading some interviews with him, and he's coming to win. He's going to come give it his all. It might keep him in the fight for a few rounds, but I don't see any upset potential here. It's just a matter of how Frampton will look beating him, and how long does Frampton want this fight to go, I think is what it will come down to. Right now I'm thinking Frampton in 5 5 to 8 rounds as well, just because, I see Jackson coming out, putting the pressure on, getting caught with pretty much everything in the kitchen sink. But if he can just stay tough and grind his way through, eventually they'll stop it. But he might be able to go a few rounds, especially if Frampton wants to give the fans a few rounds and make it a little bit longer of a show. And, and just about Frampton in general, still a great fighter, but his last few fights do concern me. Even going back to the Quigg fight, where he won the fight, but really tired out at the end of that fight, let Quigg back into that fight. I thought he won the fight, but, if Quigg made it a close fight, Quigg did, carry the second half of that fight big time. And then you go into the first Santa Cruz fight. Frampton clearly won that fight, but, he looked good. Santa Cruz is very hard to beat, so I don't want to criticize that performance too much. He beat Santa Cruz. But the second Santa Cruz fight, it looked like something was missing a little bit from Frampton. Hard to say what it was, just he didn't look like he was all there. And you can credit a lot of that with Santa Cruz, but Frampton just didn't look like he did the first fight. You go back to his last two fights, easy decision versus, I forget his name, and then you look at the Donaire fight. Donaire used to be a great fighter. He's pretty much washed up at this point. Still capable. He can still carry himself. But, Frampton didn't look great to me in that fight. I thought Donaire won 3-4 rounds. And I just question whether Frampton really still is in his prime at this point. He's 31. The lightweight fighters, they don't have as long of a shelf life sometimes as the bigger guys. And if I had to say right now, I think Frampton's at the edge of his prime or just out of his prime. I don't expect him to have any trouble with Jackson. But moving on, Frampton wants big fights. And, so I question if he can win more big fights down the road, because I wonder where he's at right now in his career. And even for that matter, how bad he wants it. After the Santa Cruz fight, the second fight, he didn't look like he was too eager to make a third fight. And he's pretty much taken 2 years off since then. Fought Donaire, but like I said, Donaire is washed up at this point. So, Jackson, nothing but just a routine, home defense in front of his home fans. Okay, I get it. But I don't know. We'll see what Frampton, we'll see how good Frampton looks. Like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and try to pinpoint around. I'm gonna say Frampton in 6. I think Jackson will come out. He'll try. He'll get caught. He'll get knocked down. He'll just on will and heart. He'll take this fight a few rounds, but eventually Frampton will just be too much for him, and they'll have to stop the fight. And yeah, so not a great weekend of boxing. Not too much here to predict. Definitely not going outside the obvious on these predictions, but just wanted to talk a little about this weekend's fights. And if you guys agree, let me know. If not, let me know why. Thanks for watching.